Hey guys, Tyler Christian with Combative Solutions, and today we're going to talk about loading the firearm. Hey guys, today I want to talk about just loading the handgun. I see this quite a bit when I'm teaching courses. I see it often too when I'm teaching experienced law enforcement officers that maybe have been around for 20 years, and they just tend to become inconsistent with loading the firearm. So one thing when you guys are working on your dry fire training, or you're working on even live fire training out of the range, when you're loading the handgun, it should be very consistent and it should be done the same way every single time. So right now I have an unloaded firearm. I visually and physically inspected it, drop the slide, and then my magazine has dummy rounds in it. So a couple things to think about and consider when loading the handgun is obviously keeping the hand in your dominant hand, a nice good strong grip, finger off the trigger, right? Super important, no finger on the trigger, always indexed. When you pull your magazine out, finger indexed on the tip of on the top round, and then I'm going to insert the magazine into the handgun, and as soon as I insert and the magazine is locked in and I hear it click, I'm then going to just immediately rotate my hand to the top of the slide. So I'm going to grab it with the palm of my hand and my four fingers. I'm going to grab it just like this, right? Call it monkey grip. What I want to do now is, holding the firearm in this position, I'm going to pull my left hand back towards my shoulder, and I'm going to drive and I'm going to push my dominant hand forward. One thing this allows me to do is if I lack some upper body strength, now I'm using both arms to manipulate that slide. What I see often is sometimes people want to just pull the slide back and they'll try to ride it forward. So they'll pull back and sometimes they'll ride the slide forward. And what tends to happen at times is that top round will sometimes get caught up in the feed ramp. If I have a problem like that where the round is caught up in the feed ramp, my slide doesn't go forward, I've obviously now induced a malfunction into the gun. So if I had to do a speed reload real fast and I'm doing this in the middle of a gunfight and I'm riding it forward, obviously a bad day. So I want to be as consistent as possible across the widest array of techniques. So loading my firearm, I get a click and I have to do a tap rack. Anytime I have to do a universal reload, so I lock the slide to the rear, pull my magazine out, insert, all that stuff. I want my hand positioning, I want my technique to be as consistent as possible. So I'm going to insert the magazine one time. I'll see this also. Guys will insert the magazine and they'll sit there and keep tapping it to make sure that the magazine is seated. It should be one insert, nice and hard, pulling my firearm in, pushing my support hand up. So it's one motion. So my firearm or my magazine is locked into the gun, hand up over the top. Now I'm going to push and pull. So my right hand is pushing forward, my left hand is pulling back, and I'm just ripping basically the slide right out of the hand. Okay? What I don't want to do is this technique where I'm grabbing with the thumb and the forefinger, and I'm now placing my ejection port straight up. This is a very weak grip. A lot of people don't have enough grip strength sometimes to manipulate the slide and pull it all the way to the rear. Another issue is now with my ejection port up, if I get in this habit of pinching the slide and trying to pull it to the rear, I could possibly induce another malfunction by not allowing that round that's inside the chamber. If I'm having to do some sort of a clear, I'm not allowing that round to fall to the ground, right? Gravity now is forcing that round back into the chamber, and more often than not, when guys start to do this type of technique, I see them pull the slide back, that round doesn't fully eject, it gets caught in the ejection port, the slide then goes forward, now they've induced another malfunction. So, tap rack, I'm over the top of the slide here. When I do my magazine insert, I'm over the slide, pulling that slide out of my support hand. Now a good way to verify and check that I have a round in the chamber is one of two ways. I could either holster the firearm, pull my magazine out, and ensure that one of my rounds is now gone, and then load back up so I have 15 again in my magazine, or whatever your magazine carries, and one in the chamber. Or another option is to just simply grab the forward portion of the slide and pull back just a little bit. All I'm doing is pulling back about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 inch maybe to ensure that I can see brass inside of that chamber, ensure that my slide is all the way forward, and then I can pull my magazine out, insert another round, and then load my firearm up again. So your goal in loading the gun, your goal in anything that you're doing in regards to shooting is just being as consistent as possible. Consistency is the biggest difference that I see between the guys that are really, really good and just the novices that go out and kind of happen to carry a gun every now and then, or just tend to go to the range. If you want to be that guy that just goes to the range, you know what, by all means, as long as you're doing things safely, do what you want. But if you're going to carry your firearm to defend yourself, your loved ones, or somebody else out in public, you need to be as consistent as you can so that on that day when you are engaged in violent conflict, you're not having to think about how do I run my gun, how do I press the trigger, how do I load this thing, how do I manipulate it? Because there's so many other things to think about when that time comes. So practice that, be consistent every single time. Don't have 3 or 4 different ways to load that gun. Have one way that allows you to be as capable as possible and as efficient as possible when you're doing those other drills and techniques.